Living forever. Do you want to live forever? Would you trade your humanity for a little bit of robotic enhancements if it could make you live forever? Transhumanism. We're going to talk about that today. And my guest, Dr. Ben Carson, has a few thoughts on the dangers of transhumanism, particularly for Christians. So you want to listen in. Welcome to Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And today, artificial intelligence, right? But before we get to that, heads up, Washington Times is offering a 50% off deal for a full year's access to its digital platform. Go to washingtontimes.com/Cheryl, type in your info, and you will have all you need to arm yourself against the very people who will tell you transhumanism is just the natural next step of evolution. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. Go home. I speak of mainstream media, of course, right? CBS, NBC, MSNBC, and so forth and so on. Want to fight these people? Want to fight off the mainstream media with some facts? Sign up for the digital edition of the Washington Times and get informed with all the stuff you need to argue back against the ridiculousness that has become the Democrat Party and become the water carriers for the Democrat Party in the press. The ones who will tell you transhumanism is great. So what is transhumanism? Let's start with the basic definition of transhumanism. And look, the easiest way, just type in transhumanism into Google and see what pops up. And here's the first thing that pops up, right? Definitions, origins, characteristics, and facts from Britannica.com. Transhumanism is a social and philosophical movement. All right, right there, we're headed into la-la left land, right? But let's read on. It's devoted to promoting the research and development of robust human enhancement technologies. Such technologies would augment or increase. I love how they have to define augment. Such technologies would increase human sensory reception, emotive ability, or cognitive capacity, as well as radically improve human health and extend human lifespans. Wow, sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Sounds like a magic elixir for death, right? To cure humanity of death, and not just guarantee that we will all live forever, but that we will all live forever healthy, happy, just like those robots they're trying to build there in China and Japan. Well, if you're a Christian already, you should have alarms zinging off in your head. Wow, are we really supposed to live forever? Because God, when he booted Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, told them one price of their sin was death. So right off, transhumanism, as this definition puts it, as so many on the left would put it, as the loons in the world of science would put it, not all scientists, I specified loons. Transhumanism is something that is the next natural step of humanity. That it's just as we moved, as these loon scientists would have us believe, as we moved from pollywog to giraffe to ape to whatever, mouse, and then finally we dropped a couple of legs and picked up a couple of arms, and here we are, voila, humans were born. As we moved down this scale of evolution, that it's only natural that we progress into something that is born of more technology and metal than flesh and soul. You know, just to sidestep for a second, I think it just nags the heck out of leftists that they haven't been able to create a soul yet. So what they do is they deny its existence, right? They say, well, if we didn't build that, it can't exist. There is no such thing as the soul. But I think deep down they know it, because if you read Romans in the Bible, it says that God wrote on the hearts of people God programmed people of an awareness, right? So I think they know it deep down that there is a soul. And I do believe that there were some scientific experiments some years ago. I would have to look this up. Maybe you can look it up and email me. But isn't there some sort of scientific investigation that was conducted on bodies or patients when they died? Their bodies would become lighter as if something left the body. And it was something that couldn't be explained except by Christians, who said that was the soul leaving the body, and it was the weight of the soul that made the difference in the weight of the body. I don't know. I wouldn't quote me on that, because that's just something that I think I heard once, or I think I read once, and maybe I should have looked it up before mentioning it. But I'm just letting you know that that's not fact-based. I haven't fact-checked it yet. Just curious about it. So back to transhumanism. Transhumanism basically is a way to use a current phrase, a modern day phrase, build back better. Let's build back better the human race, because who knows better than humans how to build humans, right? Here, let's play this video, Post-Human, an introduction to transhumanism. It's from the British Institute of Post-Human Studies. Post-human, because we have to prepare for the post-human world, right? I guess that's where we're headed now. Here we go.
Every aspect of our lives has been reshaped by technology. From the way we get around, the way we seek information, and the way we communicate. It's easy to think that if only our technology advances enough, we'll finally be satisfied. The fact is, we remain shackled by our primitive Darwinian brains.
We remain shackled by our brains. Our brains are primitive. And so we need to progress to the point where we can develop brain power that isn't primitive. The arrogance of humanity, right? See, I'm a big believer in science and scientific inquiry and scientific investigation, and I love to look at the stars and wonder. But I don't sit there and wonder, how can I make that? How can I make that better? Because I recognize that it's not my domain. I didn't build that. Finally, I can quote Barack Obama with truth. You didn't build that. I didn't build that. It's the height of arrogance to think that humanity, that science can take something that God constructed, that God created, and just make it better. And look, let me just say, there is an aspect of transhumanism that just wants to take technology and make the health of those suffering from health problems better. For instance, say you have an amputated limb. Say you come back from war, you come back from military service, and you have no legs. So transhumanism is part of the idea that you can use technology to give that individual working legs, right? Working legs that actually function as if they were real legs, flesh and blood legs. And that's not taking something that God made and making it better. That's taking something that God made and that humans removed and giving that individual back as close to what God made as possible. That's using the intelligence that God gave humans to ease the suffering of another human, right? But we're talking with some people in the transhumanist movement. They imagine a time where humans and machinery sort of meld together, where we're these sort of cyborg type people, or I don't even know if you can call what they imagine as their end result as people any longer. They just imagine the mixing of technology with humanity to the point where you have to wonder, where does humanity end and technology take over? where are the lines crossed where that individual that has become the product of transhumanism development, where that individual has become less human and more technology, more robotic. You know, the transhumanism movement, actually, if you look it up on their website, they actually envision a time where robots, where creations of people, metal, and technology have the same rights as citizens of American society. Yes, they do. There's an actual movement. There's actually a guy running for governor in California. I don't think he ran last year, but he has actually developed this whole transhumanist platform, this whole political idea based on transhumanism, based on bringing technology so far forward into American society that humans and technology are one. It's an odd concept, but it's also an evil concept, because in the hands of the wicked, in the hands of the secular and the atheists, it completely dismisses God's creation, and it sets humans as the creators of this new form of humanity. Is that really what we want? Is that where we're headed with this? Just as a quick side note, Jeffrey Epstein, right? Jeffrey Epstein, big into the transhumanist movement. That's not me just making that up. The New York Times actually reported that. In July of 2019, the New York Times wrote of Epstein, right? The sex trafficker died in prison under mysterious causes. Still wondering if it was murder or suicide, but different story. Jeffrey Epstein had an unusual dream, the Times wrote. He hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his vast New Mexico ranch. Mr. Epstein, over the years, confided to scientists and others about his scheme, according to 4 people familiar with his thinking. One more quote from this New York Times piece. Mr. Epstein's vision reflected his long-standing fascination with what has become known as transhumanism, the science of improving the human population through technologies like genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. Critics have likened transhumanism to a modern-day version of eugenics, the discredited field of improving the human race through controlled breeding, end quote. Through controlled breeding. That was Epstein. That was his view. That was his viewpoint. That was his dream, his vision. The guy who was charged with sex trafficking of females, girls as young as 14. Well, there's another red flag for you. Honestly, anything creepy Jeffrey Epstein was for, shouldn't we all agree that we're against? I don't know. Just a thought. Anyhow, my guest today, Dr. Ben Carson, he has a few opinions on transhumanism. He actually just wrote a piece for the Washington Times on transhumanism, warning Christians, hey, check this out, be aware and educated so you can properly fight it. And it's such an important topic that I think is so underreported that I wanted to have Ben Carson on this show to explain it a little bit more at length. And then you can go back and read in the Washington Times his excellent commentary on this. But right now, Dr. Ben Carson, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
It's an honor to be with you.
So you had this terrific opinion piece in the Washington Times, and I encourage listeners, June 9th, go check this out. It's called Transhumanism, the Potential Dark Side of Technological Advancement. And in it, you say something that's really, it's so concise, but it's so brilliant. Merely because we can do something does not mean that we should do it. This is exactly the line we're walking with this technology right now, isn't it?
No question about it. I mean, this is not to say that some artificial intelligence and some of the advancements that we're making aren't good, They are, but we have to be the ones in control of them. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation and then ask, how did we get here? And, we all benefit from it even now. Just about everybody has a cell phone. Very seldom do we have those senior moments anymore, or times when, I just can't think of it. Now, you can get the answer very quickly. So, that's an area where AI has obviously improved our lives. We also have, a lot of technological advances in terms of biological enhancements, artificial hearts, artificial just about any organ will soon be a possibility. That will eliminate early death in a lot of people. Now, that brings us to a very difficult point, because should we engage in keeping people alive for 200 years, for 300 years, for 400 years? What does that do to world population? What does that do to next generations? All of these are the things that we need to be thinking about rather than just plunging headlong into them.
And look, never mind just the practical aspects, like you said. The bigger question for Christians in particular is, what does that do for the concept of soul and for humans' relationship with God? If you feel you don't need God because you can just go out and create your own humanity, where does that leave a society?
And some of famous transhumanists have said just that, that they will be essentially gods with the ability to manufacture eternal life.
Yeah.
And but what does that look like? There's something about being human. You can take 10 human beings and you can show them a scene, and they all come up with differences. That's the basis of the Rorschach test. So how do you capture that and put it into a machine? I don't think it's actually even possible, to be honest with you, because there is a part of humanity that is not flesh and blood.
Right.
And that's how God speaks to us. And, people who don't believe in God, who don't believe in Christianity, who don't believe that, there's a hereafter, for them, something like transhumanism or posthumanism is their salvation.
And you know what? That's why your voice is so very necessary in this particular subject, because you, as a doctor, as somebody who understands how technology can make great strides in improving individuals' health, you should be at the forefront of saying all the technology we can get is better, no matter what. But you're not. You're constrained by certain morals and principles and virtues that come from above. And this is the line that science needs to walk, especially on transhumanism.
Absolutely. And, we are moving in our society further and further away from a belief in God, from a belief in the hereafter. And it is our godly principles that played a very large role in the kind of nation that we became. And, if you look at Democracy in America, the 2-volume set by Alexis de Tocqueville, after his extensive analysis, he came back in the last 2 chapters and talked about God and faith and those fiery preachers and how they inspired in the American people the wherewithal to be able to do what they did. And, when we give away those godly principles of loving your neighbor, of caring for the poor, what takes its place? Practicality and things like cancel culture and all the things that are antithetical to the kind of society that we became because of our belief systems.
That's right. That's right. This nation was built on Judeo-Christian principles, and really Christian principles if you want to get down to the bare truth of it. And, especially under this last year of the coronavirus, science has become so suspect nowadays. And so now you bring forward, the nuttiness that's contained in much of this transhumanism argument. Where can individual citizens go for the truth of the field of science now? Aside from you, of course, where else can people go?
Well, that's a very excellent question. I think what you have to do is, first of all, recognize that we're all unique individuals, that we have these amazing brains. This was so important to me as a youngster. I didn't think I was very smart. I was listening to what everybody else was saying. They were telling me how the society is stacked against black people. And, I bought into all of this garbage. And until I started doing something very important, and this is what I recommend to people: start reading. And, as I started reading about scientists and explorers and entrepreneurs and all these incredible people, it became very clear to me that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. So you don't have to let other people think for you and dictate for you and decide what your future is for you. You get to do that yourself. That's something that's extremely unique about human beings. And that is something that would be obliterated if we allow machines to make decisions for us, because the machines will make decisions based on political correctness, on what someone else has decided is supposed to be right. And how do you make progress in a situation like that?
That's a good point. And, kind of wound up in this lust or this quest for technology advancements that make life easier is just the fact that humans, a lot of humans, want the easy way out. But really there's something to be said for the struggle, right? Because it's out of struggle that our growth comes. It's out of struggle our self-esteem gets forged. How do you respond to that?
And learning occurs. There's no one who doesn't have obstacles in their life. Even Elon Musk has obstacles in his life.
Right.
The question is, how do you deal with those obstacles? Do they become your excuse for failure, or does each obstacle become a hurdle that strengthens you for the next one? Again, it goes back to the individual and to how they have been socialized and what philosophies drive them. But I'm not certain that you can create that in a machine and in something that is not human, to be honest with you. Emotion. Where do you capture that? Where does a thought emanate? Where does it come from? With all of our sophisticated machinery, our PET scanners and our MRIs, our electroencephalograms, it doesn't matter. We still cannot pinpoint the origin of a thought. And if you can't do that, then how can you transfer it?
I have an image of the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon right now with Calvin lying awake at night pondering just that very question. Where does a thought originate? So transhumanists come along and they say that we can create all these things ourselves. We don't need God. We don't need anything but more technology. And they want to basically meld flesh with metal to create a better human, one that may not even die, correct?
That's correct. That's what they would like to do. That would be their ultimate goal. And there is no question that the technology will allow us to overcome many physical problems and physical defects. But it will never, in my opinion, be able to capture the soul, the mind, the thought process, because that is something that is intangible. And it is also something that separates human beings from other creatures. It's the reason that human beings are able to control. It's a reason a weak human being can control a powerful elephant. And because we have something that that elephant doesn't have, something that the ape doesn't have, or any other creature has. And it is intangible. And because it's intangible, you cannot put it in a bottle.
Does it cause you any level of dismay to see scientists who are atheist and just outright secular?
Well, we know that that's going to come. If you read the Bible, it talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so none of that surprises me. It doesn't cause me any dismay. I have had a lot of interesting conversations with so-called scientists, about creation, about the existence of man. And in most cases, they get frustrated and start calling you names because
right.
they can't deal with the argument.
Right, because wisdom comes from God, right? And so if you're a godly person, you're able to withstand those attacks.
Exactly. So this is the main thing that I want people to understand is you have to engage. You can't just, sit in the corner and allow things to go on without challenging them and without helping, to stir the conversation in the right direction without putting, we have to make sure we put morality into this. The whole concept of morality is disappearing in our society. And what's right and what's wrong is being determined by tech giants and news media as opposed to by the heart.
That's absolutely right. And, you kind of put me on the line of a thought that a lot of people may not want to wade into the transhumanism argument, the artificial intelligence field, the fields of technology, because they feel unequipped to make logical cases. But really, anybody in America with belief in God can make the case for morality, whether that is in government and politics, the economy, or science, right? So this is where Christians should be stepping into the transhumanism debate.
Exactly, because when you think about it, what in your heart seems right to you? To forgive someone or to cancel someone? And I think if people really stopped and started thinking about that, there would be a significant change in what's going on.
I want to believe that as well. And just last question, Dr. Carson, where do you see this whole transhumanism pursuit going? Where do you see it landing, taking into consideration the current cultural landscape of America?
Well, I see it progressing. I see people trying very hard to create immortality for themselves. But I also, as a Christian, believe that God has this under control and that he is going to return. And therefore, I'm not going to lay in bed awake at night worrying about it.
Amen. Pride goeth before fall, right? So I guess arrogance is all tied up in this transhumanism quest.
No question.
Dr. Ben Carson, thank you so much for this piece in the Washington Times. People need to check it out June 9th, and for the excellent work that you continue to do on behalf of America. Thank you.
And thank you for being a voice for all of us.
Oh, thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Transhumanism, the potential dark side of technological advancement. Got to check it out. Got to go to the Washington Times and check it out. And, of course, continue to follow Dr. Ben Carson's excellent work on behalf of America at the nonprofit that he founded, American Cornerstone Institute, AmericanCornerstone.org. In the meanwhile, Check out transhumanism. This is a red flag that Christians in America cannot afford to dismiss. Check it out. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time. And in the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.